All right, welcome back, everyone, for another live on diabetes. So, today we're going to talk about something that comes up a lot, low carb or keto diets. Okay. And specifically, we're going to discuss if they work, right? Obviously, that could be a broad definition. Work does, how do you define something working? So we're going to talk about the short term risk and benefits of being on a low carb keto diet, and as well as the long term risks with being on a low carb keto diet. Ultimately, what I would like to walk away with is, or like you to walk away with, is an informed decision on whether or not to use a low carb approach versus using alternative approaches to manage your diabetes or reverse it if that's your goal. In this channel, we big up reversal, okay? When you're if you're type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, if you're a type 1 diabetic, you still can benefit from what we teach on this channel. But that's our focus is diabetes reversal on this channel. So I would like to start with a question for you guys. Have you ever used a low carb diet, whether it be for weight loss or blood sugar control, diabetes, for whatever reason? And um, if you are using it now, so let me know in the chat here. Let me just pull up my slides while you guys answer. And if you guys are watching for the first time, definitely let us know so we can greet you. If you're a long time viewer, then definitely let us know so we could welcome you back. All right. All right. All right. So yeah, we don't have any answers yet, but I'm sure you guys probably watching, whether on the recording or live, have heard of the benefits of low carb diets for weight loss and for blood sugar control. But here's a problem. When you're going on a low carb diet, and low carb, we're talking anywhere from 50 grams or less of carbohydrate a day. To be in ketosis or really keto diets, actually recommend even lower than 50. I've some recommend as low as 20 a day, 20 grams of carbs a day. But if you are trying to eat low carb, right? And I want to really define it first. You're eating usually 50 carbs or less a day, whether that be for blood sugar control or weight management. Does it work? Okay. Well, let's stick first with the diabetes. Okay. Being on a low carb or keto diet absolutely will help you lower your blood sugar levels. If you've tried it, you probably experienced that when you start to eliminate or limit the high carb foods like obviously pasta, rice, starchy vegetables, grains, legumes, you see a benefit automatically sometimes in your blood sugar level. It's what my wife used for a long time. It's what many of my patients use. Many of the clients in our diabetes reversal health coaching program come to me with a low carb diet, whether or not it works, right? But it is something that you will see immediate benefits from for most people. Okay, but here is the problem. Okay, low carb and keto diets are managing the symptom of diabetes, not the cause of diabetes. Um, I hope that makes sense, but I'm gonna explain it. If This is the best analogy I've used and I've heard used before. If you have a peanut allergy, right? Um, and I tell you to simply stop eating peanuts, have I reversed your allergy? Probably not, right? Just if I have a um intolerance for something and I remove that thing I'm intolerant of, right? That's not reversal. So unfortunately, a lot of people are getting confused thinking that when I went low carb, my A1C dropped, my blood sugar normalized, I must have reversed or put my diabetes in remission. Low carb diets then therefore reverse or at least put diabetes in remission. But diabetes is there's a few definitions, but one of the definitions of diabetes is an intolerance to carbohydrates, right? You suffer, if you're a diabetic, you're suffering from an intolerance for carbohydrates, right? Particularly pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes. However, type 1 diabetics can also have intolerance to carbohydrates. When I eat carbs, my sugar spikes, right? So by simply limiting your carb intake and seeing that you're not getting spikes in your sugar, all you did is remove the symptom of the disease. You did not cure the disease. It's like, but this analogy is not perfect because you're doing more than that. And I love this analogy actually that I heard in Dr. Read and Dr. Michael Greger, yeah, Michael Greger's website, nutritionfacts.org, that says it's even worse than someone no longer experiencing the symptom, because the peanut allergy, you remove peanuts, so what, right? I don't like peanuts anyway, right? It's not going to hurt you to never eat peanuts again. The problem really is to go on a low carb diet. Not only are you not really reversing the disease and just managing its symptoms, you're actually worsening the disease, and analogy that Dr. Greger uses, I'm going to piggyback off of, is it's similar to someone having pneumonia. Okay, now follow this. Someone has pneumonia and they have high fevers. High fevers are a symptom, right, of having pneumonia. If I tell you to go outside in the cold to reduce your fever, it's going to work, right? If I go outside in the snow with a fever of 102, my temperature is going to drop. But what's going to happen to the disease? It's going to get worse, right? You're worsening the disease over time. Sure, you feel cool now. And that's what happens with diabetes. We're going to show you with some studies that, over time, long term, short term, yes, the symptom, high blood sugars, gets better, but over time, and that's why I'm happy to see Davy Hernandez say they're no longer on low carb diets. I think that's what I'm reading. Good job. I think it's something you need to think about, really, because you're just managing the symptoms. You're just trimming the branches of this diabetes tree. You're not uprooting it. You're not uprooting it. So how is it making things worse, though? Many of us may be thinking, well, I've been low carb. I know people who've been low carb. They seem fine to me. I'll just continue limiting carbs for the rest of my life, right? But there's a risk when you do this, okay? And let's go through some studies, okay? So you guys, if you have questions about this, let me know. So far, no questions is good. That means I'm doing pretty good job starting this out. But let me know if this is a surprise to you, because um, here is a multitude of studies that shows that there is a positive association to developing diabetes and meat. And when we say meat, we're including poultry. So chicken is included in meat, but all meat increases your risk of developing diabetes, right? And of course, when you're eating a low carb diet, most often, most people are increasing their consumption of meat, of animal foods, when they're low carb, right? Because you got to replace the carbs with something. So looking at the multiple studies, with large population groups, like the EPIC study, the European Perspective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, one of the largest nutritional studies, has about 500,000 participants and their information over 12 years. Adventist Health Studies, 8,000 people over 17 years. Nurse Health Study, 20,000 people over 19 years. Women's Health Study, 37,000 people over almost 9 years. Health Professionals Follow-up Study, 42,000 male subjects over 12 years. So when you look at the long-term risk of being on a high meat diet, right, an animal-centric diet, all these population studies, large groups of people studied over long periods of time, show the same association. Now, if it was just a few studies, then you might say, well, maybe it was something else. But your tennis should be up. And anytime you see a strong, consistent association between one thing and another repeatedly over time in large groups of people. And the more meat you eat, the more diabetes you develop, right? So this should definitely get us our thought patterns that thinking towards what's happening now. Am I really reversing? Am I really putting diabetes in remission, or am I making things worse? Okay. In the past lives, and what we do always often in this channel, we highlight the main culprit. That's saturated fat. That increases insulin resistance, and that's really the root cause of what's happening here. There are other components in animal foods of that worsen in diabetes. We're going to cover that in other lives. To go through all the components, all the parts of the animal. When I say parts, I mean the compounds within the animal that worsen insulin resistance. That definitely deserves multiple lives. So saturated fat is just one of those components, but it is the largest one. Why we see a positive association often to developing diabetes over time. Um, what's interesting is that it's not just about diabetes, because ultimately, like, let me just say this first. Don't we all want to just live longer? you know I mean, it's obviously having high blood sugars and having to prick your finger and all that stuff is annoying, but at the end of the day, what you really want is to live longer, right? We don't want our lives cut short prematurely. We don't want to die, as I often say, as the Bible says, before our time. That's what it's really about. So if a method of controlling your blood sugar levels also at the same time can possibly shorten your lifespan, doesn't that defeat the purpose of that method? So what happens when we increase our consumption of animal foods is consistent across population studies. Okay. um Again, let's go back to these studies. These are other studies. EPIC is one of them. I always quote the European Perspective Investigation in Cancer and Nutrition. um that's one that I always highlight. Harvard School of Public Health shows the same consistent increase in consumption and heart disease and mortality. Journal of Internal Medicine analyzed a study of cardiovascular mortality and nutrition within 40,000 Swedish women over 15 years. A similar study was done in Greece, 22,000 adults in 10 years. A meta-analysis study, so a compilation of studies, 17 studies put together, showed a consistency. This study included over 270,000 people, right? Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School got together. They also performed a prospective study looking at 130,000 participants over 26 years minimum. And they all showed the same thing, guys. As animal food consumption increases, and I say animal foods to make sure we're not excluding meat, okay? Chicken, because a lot of people think, oh, that just means red meat. But as animal foods consumption increases, so does the risk of cardiovascular mortality and all-cause mortality. Okay, we've done a study on eggs already and shows the same thing. Okay, eggs included, and this is really interesting too. Okay, so what about body weight? So people, when they go on keto diet, when they go on low carb diets, they tend to lose weight, right? And has anyone lost weight on keto diet? I mean, or low carb or keto diet? Let us know in the chat. But yeah, you could lose weight. You can absolutely lose weight, but when it comes to weight loss, and the same issue with diabetes, is it the best way to lose weight? Is it the best way to lower blood sugars? If it was the only way, if this was the only way, only method available, approach available to us to lower our blood sugar levels to get to an ideal body weight, then yeah, well, obviously you got to weigh the risk and benefits, because having high blood sugars, being overweight in itself, puts you at higher risk. But the reality is, it's not the only way, right? So let's look at the study real quick, okay? David Hernandez says he did. Yeah, you can lose weight, but this is a study that compared plant-based diets, a plant-based diet, and a keto or low carb diet. Okay, I'm not sure if they went keto, but definitely low carb. So what they did in this study, they had participants start out with a one diet, right, being plant-based, another group doing low carb, right, and they did that for 2 weeks before switching to the other diet, right. So the group that did the low carb versus the animal centric diet, the low carb animal centric diet, compared to the group that did a plant based diet. And I should say this was also a very healthy, vegetable rich low carb diet, right? So a healthy low carb diet compared to a healthy plant based diet. Which group lost more weight? The low carb diet. So obviously you say, yep, see, low carb diets are better for weight loss. But that's not the end of the story. That's not the whole story, okay? Which group lost more body fat? The plant-based diet. Isn't that interesting? So the low carb diet loses more body weight. The low fat plant-based diet loses more body fat, right? Because when you go on a low carb diet, especially in the initial stages of being low carb, first weeks or so, you're going to be losing water and muscle mass, two things you don't really need to lose. It's similar to weight loss drugs. Some of the initial, especially in the initial stages, that first really quick drop in weight you experience wasn't fat. It wasn't body fat. It was the body seeing itself in ketosis, seeing itself in starvation mode, and saying, "Okay, we got to spare fat. All right, um, go ahead and sacrifice muscle mass." And that's what happens when you go on these low carb, ultra low carb diets. You can actually lose muscle mass, something that you don't want to do as you age, right? Whereas when you go on low fat diets, low fat, whole food, plant based diets cause you to lose body fat, the harmful visceral fat that is causing chronic disease. Okay. And what's worse is that keto diets are very hard to keep up. I don't know if Davey Hernandez, if you experience that, it's very hard to maintain long term. So, what happens when you stop a keto diet and you gain the weight back? You end up gaining more fat than muscle, meaning that the weight you gain back, right, makes you fatter than you were before you started the diet. Ah, that's the problem with weight loss drugs too, right? That's why it's so important to make sure you're exercising and doing resistance training while on these GLP-1s. But um, definitely interesting to think about, right? So there is this the best way? Is it the best way? Do keto diets work really for weight loss? Well, not better than plant-based diets because we want to lose fat, not muscle. Here's another study looking at the end measure of actual diabetes remission. So taking the definition of remission to be under 6.5% and off all diabetes medications, which is great, right? Who wants to be off all medications and have a normal blood sugar level or at least a pre-diabetic level, right? When they compared a low carb diet to a control group, right, not on diet, who had diabetes, after 6 months, and this is what the 6 month mark shows here, right? After about 6 months, you see not much of a risk reduction, right? So out of 113, out of 100 people in the control group, 13 people had the mark of 6.5, right? Compared to the low carb group having out of 100 people, 16. But after 12 months, things got worse for the low carb group. Now only 13 out of the 100, right, actually experienced improvements in their blood A1C, right, without medications versus the control group, right, who essentially did nothing, actually doing even better. So long term, it seems like the effects seem to wear off if there are good effects at all. They're short term, but it's not our only way, right? It's not the only option we have. That's why we promote what we promote on this channel, which is a whole food plant-based lifestyle. Okay. Let's see what else we got. So what about diabetes complications? What about the nerve damage or artery damage that happens when we have diabetes, right? Diabetes is a leading cause of blindness, leading cause of limb amputations, leading cause of kidney failure, one of the main causes of liver disease, liver failure. Those high blood sugars poison everywhere in our body, so you must it's logical to think that regardless of what keto diets or low carb diets do, we got to drive the sugars down, right? Take medications, take insulin, because the sugars are damaging everywhere in our body, right? So it's like on one hand, you have the dangers of high cholesterol, saturated fat rich diets, and the other hand, you have the dangers of high blood sugar, and we got to mitigate the high blood sugars. But here's the thing: even when you're on keto, and this is interesting when I learned this, even when you're on keto diets actually increase risk of complications like the nerve damage, the neuropathy, the blindness, right, the kidney disease. This is because when you're on a low carb or keto diet, you're especially, and I should say this, I should preface this by saying specifically animal centered diets, right? So we could talk about plant based keto. That'll be definitely something we should study. But when you're talking about animal based foods, you're exposing yourself to what's called advanced glycation end products. I don't know if anyone heard that term, advanced glycation end products, or is the acronym is age compounds. Age compounds are basically compounds that are found naturally in food, right? They're in food sources, so you could actually be exposed. You can introduce your body to them by eating them, right? And these compounds are not friendly to our aging, right? That's why they call it age compounds. They cause you to age or accelerate aging and accelerate age-related diseases like again Alzheimer's and heart disease and neuropathy, all the things that diabetics tend to suffer the most, right? So you don't want these age products in your body. Unfortunately, when you're eating an animal-centric diet, guess what you're exposed to? A lot of age products. Advanced glycation end products basically form when you use high heat, high dry heat methods in cooking, right? So when you take meat or chicken and you're frying it or broiling it or baking it, you're exposing it to high dry heat, and what happens is you're forming advanced glycation end products. Another thing that actually causes advanced glycation end products to start to spike in our body, unfortunately, is having high blood sugars, right? This is advanced glycation end products happen when the sugar combines with protein. That's called a glycation process. It's what how we measure A1C, glycated hemoglobin, right? As sugar combines with hemoglobin, that's how you get your A1C number. The higher the sugars in your blood, the higher your A1C, your glycated hemoglobin. So advanced glycation end products are going to be higher when someone has uncontrolled blood diabetes. But here's the conundrum, okay? Here's what's actually interesting. When you go on a keto diet, you actually create more advanced glycation end products for two reasons. Number one, you're exposed to them in your diet, you're eating them. And number two, when you're in ketosis, you create uh, acetone, which is actually a ketone that converts into, and I have the term here, methylglyoxal, right? Methylglyoxal is actually one of the main precursors for the creation of advanced glycation end products. So this compound right here is actually formed when you're in ketosis, when you're on a keto diet. You're increasing your exposure, right, and storage of this harmful compound in your body and increasing your risk of diabetes complications like nerve damage and artery damage, a very thing we're trying to avoid when we have diabetes, right? Um, so this is actually where I'm going to stop this. For time's sake, we're going to go into other things in the future. I know we tend to get a lot of views when we talk about ads, so I'm gonna hold off right there. But guys, this is not our only option. It's unfortunate. I get really passionate about this because so many of us, as diabetics, are only told one story, that you got to lower the blood sugar levels by eating low carb and nothing else, right, works. It's not true. Not only is it not your only option, but also can be a very harmful one, a harmful choice in the long term, right? So if you have questions, of course, reach out. Those of you watching the playback of this live, I always try my best to read the comments as we stream on multiple platforms. But beloved, please know that there's always hope, and hold on to the hope of healing, right? Diabetes can be reversed, but we got to use the right approach. And if that's your interest, if that's your goal, then check out the links in our bio. And every live, we invite you to check the links and book a free consultation to join our diabetes reversal family. All right. And we've been reversing diabetes for the last over 2 years now, and we're going to go on strong. If that's your desire, then you should be my next client, right? And join the family of people who are using whole plant foods to reverse their diabetes and be off medications for good. So, beloved, I pray above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. We'll see you next week on